Alright, welcome back to the Crabby. Today we're going to learn how to play Haspelknecht. So the theme to this game is we're farmers, but instead of growing crops, we're actually going to be digging for coal. Alright, so it's an interesting theme. So this is sort of an action selection type of drafting type of game. Alright, it's a little hard to explain, but this is going to be the setup and rules breakdown video. Click the link below if you want to see my review or the full playthrough. So let's get started. Alright, let's start the setup by putting out our game board over here, and you're gonna have two markers. First is the phase tracker, which is a black cylinder. Don't put on the track just yet, just put on the side. And the other one, which is a little round disc, is gonna be the year tracker. You're gonna put on year number 1. Alright, after that you're gonna put one of each player's disc on the 0 space of the point track. The points go around the board, and then you're gonna jumble up another disc of each player's and put it on the middle track here, and this is the turn order. We're gonna look at that later during the rules. Let's jump to our resource boards over here. Now, the amount of resource boards is equal to the amount of players. Alright, so if you're playing only 2 players, you're going to be playing with this one board. 3 players, you're going to add another board. And 4 players, you'll add the last board on top. Alright, after that, what you're going to want to do is in the rulebook, it'll tell you how many of each disc you need to add to the bag. Alright, if you're playing 4 players, just dump them all in. You're going to play with all of them. But the lower player counts, you're going to have to take out some of the discs. Alright, you're going to jumble it all together. All the spaces on the left need 3 discs. Take them out randomly. And all the spaces on the right need 6 discs. Again, take them out randomly. After that, the bag should be empty. Alright, next, let's jump to the development section. Alright, this is where we're going to be getting bonuses and technologies. Before I even talk about this, if you do want to play a more experienced game, look at the back of the rulebook. There are some different variants you can play with, but this is going to be the base game setup. Alright, so what you're going to do first is you're going to take the amount of tiles per color equal to the number of players plus 1. Alright, so in a 3-player game like I have here, I'm going to have 4 of every single colored disc or tile. Alright, and then you're going to always set them up yellow, silver, green, and brown, working your way up just like you see. Alright, then you're going to have to fill up all the development tiles. So whenever you see pretty much an outline, it's going to be an indication that you need to go get a tile. So here's some building tiles, and here's some one-shot bonuses that you're gonna have to get from the general supply. Outside the area here, just have your resources. So you have wood, water, food, and money. Now for the player board area, pretty simple. Just give everyone a player board. They're not color coded, so it's fine. You're gonna give them each coal just to fill up all the coal cubes on their board. So you can have some on the top and all the mining actions down here. And then finally just give them the rest of their colored discs down here, which they're going to use on the development board. Alright, that's pretty much it. Let's go to rules. Alright, rules overview time here for Haspelknecht. So at its core, this is sort of an action drafting game. We're going to be going through a phase where you're going to be drafting the actions, and each colored discs represents different actions your farmer or help are going to perform on your farm. Alright, but we'll get to that later in the video. Alright, so the way the game is structured, alright, is we're going to follow this phase wheel sort of thing, and the game's going to also last 3 rounds. So you're going to end up going around this wheel 3 times, and as you can see, there's a spring, a summer, a fall, and a winter sort of phase. Alright, and you just go through all the icons one at a time until you finish the game. Alright, so whenever you hit the cloud symbol, pretty simple, it just means add a water to your player board. We'll get to that later. Alright, whenever you see the wheelbarrow, that's the phase where you're actually going to be doing the drafting and interacting with the other players. Alright, when you see the man here with the shovel, that's when you can perform your actions using the discs that you drafted. All the players can end up doing that step at the exact same time, unless there's some order that actually matters for the development race over here, but we'll get to that later in the video. Alright, and as you can see, you're going to do that for spring, you're going to do the exact same thing for summer, for fall, and then when you get to winter, it's sort of like a setup, payment, storage type of phase. You don't actually perform any actions. You're going to end up scoring the coal that you took out. You're going to have to pay your taxes, and then you can store your stuff for the following year. Alright, so the game is pretty simple. So how I'm going to teach you the game is first we're going to talk about all the core mechanics of the game dealing with the drafting, and after that we're going to talk about all the actions, and then we'll come back and talk about scoring. Alright, so let's get started. Alright, so the first thing we're going to tackle is the core mechanism of the game, which is the action disc drafting from these resource boards over here. Alright, so remember, you're going to end up doing this 3 times per year and 9 times in total, and it's whenever you hit these wheelbarrow spaces, so this green space, the light green, and the brown spaces of the phase wheel over here. Alright, now, when performing this phase, you're going to do 3 steps. Alright, the first step is reseeding the resource boards. You obviously skipped this during the first draft of the game, but I'm going to show you how to do this after I explain steps 2 and 3. Alright, step 2 is actually doing the draft. Alright, And the way you draft is in turn order. So right now it's going to be white, red, then green. All right, and we're going to end up drafting twice. All right, you're going to know twice by, you're going to look at your player board here, and the first group of discs you draft is going to go in the 1 spot, and the second group is going to go in the 2 spot. All right, so now some general rules about drafting. What you're trying to do is you're going to take all of one colored disc from the right hand side of these resource boards from one of the depots. So these sections on the right are called depots. All right, so just looking at an example here, you got a couple of choices. You can take these 4 brown or 2 black, or these 2 yellow or 3 black or 1 brown, or 3 yellow or 2 black or 1 brown, for example. All right, so let's say white is first and they decide to take these 2 yellow for whatever reason. All right, now if your first draft is from the sections with this icon here, so you can see the number 1 wheelbarrow, that means your first draft. You're also going to gain a rainwater to add to your player board. So maybe that's why white wanted to draft from this section here, because they wouldn't gain any rainwater. Alright, but then let's say it's red is up next and they really want 4 brown discs. So they would take these 4 brown discs from here, but they would also gain a rainwater. Now whenever you gain your discs, remember they go to your player board here. So I gained my 4 discs and I would also gain my rainwater. And then you just keep going. So then it's going to be green, and let's just say they wanted these 3 black discs. And then when everyone's drafted once, you're going to loop back around to the start of turn order. And then white's going to go. Now, during your second draft, you ignore these icons obviously because that's during your first draft. So let's just say they drafted already 2 yellows. So let's say their second draft is going to be 2 blacks. All right, which brings me up to a very special rule. In total, the amount of discs you're going to draft is at most 5. All right, so now my first draft I drafted 4 brown, which means now when I draft my second time, all right, at most I'm going to get is 1 disc because my grand total is at most 5. So if I want to take yellow, for example, I'm not going to take 3 yellow, I'm only going to take 1 yellow. All right, and still going to go on my player board here, and as you can see here, my grand total is 5, so I'm fine. You can be less than 5, that's okay, but you can't be more than 5. And then we're just going to keep going. So the last draft here is going to be green, and they already drafted 3 black, so let's say they want to get 2 yellows. All right, and that's how you draft. All right, so that's step 2. After that, step 3 is redoing the turn order, which is the markers over here. All right, so the way this works is you're only going to look at the first groupings of your draft. All right, so you're going to look at the number 1 spot and you're going to calculate a point total. All right, you're not going to score these points, it's just to calculate to reorder the turn order. All right, so if you drafted yellow, each disc is going to be worth 3. If you drafted brown, each disc is going to be worth 2. And if you drafted black, each disc is going to be worth 1. All right, so in this scenario, all right, white drafted 2 yellows, so this is a score of 6. I drafted 4 brown, so that's a score of 8. So it's 4 times 2, right? It's 8. And then let's say green drafted 3 blacks, so they have a score of 3. So the lower score, golf rules, is going to be the new first player. So green obviously was last, has the lowest one, they're going to go to the front. I had the most, I'm going to go to the back of the line. And yellow had the second most, they're going to go in the middle. All right, turn order matters because when we perform our actions, if there's any conflicts, you're going to go in turn order. All right, and for the next draft, you're also going to follow the new turn order. All right, and that is step 3. All right, now let's circle back and I'm going to talk about how to seed. All right, so remember, we don't seed during the first draft of the game. All right, but all future drafts, you are going to be missing some discs. So how do you seed the boards? All right, so after performing our actions, all these discs that we've drafted are going to end up back in the bag. All right, you're going to give it a good shuffle. All right, but the first thing you're going to do is you're going to move all the discs on the left-hand side over to the right. And then you're going to reseed the left-hand side first. So 3 discs up here, 3 discs in the middle, and then 3 discs down here. And then you're going to look at the right-hand side and you're going to fill it back up to 6. So this one's missing a disc, this one's missing 2 discs, and this one is also missing 2 discs. All right, after reseeding, the bag should always be empty. All right, and then you're pretty much ready to go. So remember, step 1 is reseeding. Step 2 is drafting. You're going to draft twice, max up to 5 discs. And step 3 is redoing the turn order track up here. Alright, after drafting, you're going to move the phase marker to the next spot, and the next spot is always the performing your action phase, and that's the man with the shovel icon. Now this phase is separated into 2 different steps. First you have the planning step, and then you have the actual execution of the actions. Alright, so for planning, basically what you're doing is you're assigning your discs and food and money to your various workers. Alright. Basically, your farmer and your helper can only accept discs, but you might have other workers around your board that might accept different types of payment. Just for example, your worker up here can accept money, food, or yellow discs to perform their actions. Now, the actions they could perform are always indicated at the bottom, so your farmer can do any of the actions, but as you can see here, your helper can do the development action, and this guy here can only do the water or mining for coal actions. In the future, you will be getting this board replacement, and you can see here the accepted payments for these workers are indicated on the board. All right, once everyone's planned, all right, then you can all perform your actions, and you can pretty much do these all at the exact same time, except if there is maybe a conflict with the development board over here. You might have to look at turn order, but besides that, you can all perform your actions. They're all tied to your own board, so do them all at the same time. All right, so first let's do the planning phase. So remember, you assign your discs. So let's just say I want to do this, and then I want to do this, and then remember, the worker up here can accept the yellow. So let's just say for whatever reason I want to do that. All right, this is a valid plan. All right, and then I'm able to go to the second step, which is executing my actions. All right, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna go explain each of the different type of actions in more detail. Alright, 5 of the 6 icons of the actions you can perform in the game are depicted below your farmer. Alright, the only extra one that you'll see later on is when you use your Haspelknecht, you'll see the coal with the up icon. We'll talk about this much later. Alright, so what we're going to do is let's talk about each of these actions, how to activate it, and what the benefit is going to be for each. Alright, the first 2 actions are the simplest actions, and that's the food and wood actions over here. And these benefits you can only get by assigning yellow and brown discs to your farmer or the helper. Alright, and you're pretty much just going to exchange the discs that you assign at a 1-to-1 rate with the general supply for that good. So for yellow you're going to get food, and for brown you're going to get wood. So in this example here, I assigned 2 yellow to my farmer, so I'm going to go to the general supply, take 2 food, and put it on my farm. After performing the action, you can pretty much dump these discs back into the bag. Alright, and you're going to do the exact same thing for the wood. So I assigned 3 wood discs here. So I'm going to go to the general supply, take 3 lumber. 3 lumber. And add it to my personal area. And then I can dump these discs back into the bag. Alright, the next 2 actions to talk about are the water and coal actions. And I'm going to tackle these both together because you activate them using the same colored discs on your farmer and the helper. And you're going to notice those same icons appear on the other workers, and that, remember, you use either yellow discs, food, or money. Alright. You can also use the combination of the discs you assign to that worker however you like. So if I assign 2 discs here, I can use 1 disc to remove water and 1 disc to remove coal. So in this example here, I assigned 2 discs. Let's just say I remove 2 water here with 1 disc. And then I remove coal with the other disc. Whenever you remove coal in this game, you always remove it from the left, working your way to the right. Alright, now some general rules to the game. Alright, you can never excavate coal until you have less than 2 water in the top section. We're going to talk about the bottom section later on, but it's the exact same thing with 2 and 5 water. Alright, and also you can never excavate coal in this top section past the wooden markers until you place wood there. Now in this game, as a free action, whenever you like, you can add wood markers to your tracks. So I can add a wood marker here, and now for example I would be able to excavate these 2 and these 2, but I wouldn't be able to excavate these 2 because I didn't fill up this piece of wood yet. But remember, as a free action, I can add this here, so now I'd be able to excavate all the coal in the top section up here. Alright, let's talk about all the rules tied to the top section up here, because the excavation works slightly different when talking about the mining operation down here. Alright, so like I already said, when excavating coal from the top, the coal gets, moved to your farmhouse right away. Alright, so every time you move coal, it goes into your farm. Now, when you fully excavate the whole top section over here, that's when you're going to replace it with this board from the general supply. Alright, so you're done with the Pinge area, and you're going to start mining further down. Alright, so what you're going to do is you're going to move any wood that you have here back into the general supply. Any water that you have left in the Pinge drops down into the bottom area, and then you're going to replace it with the new board. Alright, just a little note here. If you finish this whole top section during the first year of the game, you're going to score 2 points right away on the point track. And if you do it during year 2, you're going to gain 1 point. Alright, but you're still going to replace this whether you do it in year 1, 2, or 3. And this is going to give you access to 2 different workers that you can use in the following phases. Alright, to either remove water, move coal up, or excavate coal. Alright, next let's talk about how the game changes when you finish the top section and you're dealing with only the tunnel. Alright, first, the lumber rules are still in effect, so those are the same. You need to put up the lumber so that you can excavate further down. So in this example, I can excavate this coal and this coal, but not these 2 coal cubes because this lumber is not there. Alright. Now, the slight change in the rules is when excavating coal, instead of going to your farm right away, when you're in the tunnel, the coal goes to the tunnel space over here. Alright, you need a separate action, we're going to talk about that later, to pull up the coal and move it to your farm. Alright, but in this example here, let's say I mined twice for coal, I would add 2 tokens to this tunnel area over here. Now you're going to notice that the red markers changed a little bit. Alright, so instead of just 2, now you have 5. Alright, so to excavate coal, alright, you can't excavate if you have more than 5. Or 5 or more. Alright, so if I had 5 water in total, I would have to remove water, alright, before I can start excavating coal. And the water that gets removed here gets moved into the general supply right away. And that's what you're going to be doing with those 2 actions. Alright, the last action to talk about that only appears, which is the black with the up arrow. Alright, and it doesn't appear on the other icons in the game. And this is moving the coal cubes from the tunnel now into your farm. Alright, so it takes an extra step to move coal cubes from the tunnel section down here to your farm than it did from the top part. So here, when you would assign a yellow disc, a food, or money, you're going to do the action 3 times actually. So for each one, you can move 1 cube into your farm. Alright. Now, you're going to wonder why it's 5. Alright, you have a section of 2 and 3. If you have 2 or more water, then you can't pull out coal, you have to move the water first. Alright, so let's say I had 3 water. Alright, by putting a yellow disc here, I would have to remove 2 water first, and then my other 2 actions, alright, because you see it's 3x. Alright, so 1x would be removing 2 water, and then my other 2x would be removing 2 coal from the tunnel into my farm. And that's basically how all those actions work when you're talking about the tunnel section down here. Let's circle back into the assigning of the discs. There's something called a synergy bonus. So if you assign the same colored discs to both your helper and your farmer, you actually get a +1 as a bonus. So in this example here, let's say I assign 2 wood discs and 2 wood discs to my helper and my farmer. Instead of getting 4 lumber from the general supply, I'm actually going to get 5 because it's 2 plus 2. They're in synergy, that's a +1, so 5 in total. It works the exact same way for all the other colored discs, so for food and for excavation and removing water. Alright, the last action to talk about is the development action. That's the hexagonal icon right over here. By the way, I did forget to mention one thing. When assigning discs to your workers, they all must be the exact same color. The development action is the only one where you can assign different colored discs. So in this example here, let's just say I had a black and a brown disc assigned to my farmer, and I want to do a development action. Now, the prerequisite of developing a tile is indicated on the top. So this tile here is a brown and anything else, so gray means anything. This one's a black and anything else, and so on and so on. So the 2 discs that I place, I'd pretty much be able to develop any of the bottom ones over here. Alright, All right, so you pick one and you develop it. By developing, that's where you're going to be using your discs. You're going to place it in the top right, and then you're going to get the benefit indicated on the tile, which is always at the bottom. All right, so your first disc that you put out is probably always going to go in the yellow section over here, and then your following discs are always going to be connected or restarting from the bottom. So my next development could either be any of the yellow ones or moving my way up the tree connected to something I already have. So I can develop this one, for example, and then after I did this one, I can connect to this one or this one and just keep moving upwards. All right, but you're going to see that the prerequisite of moving up, they usually need more discs and more colors of discs as you go up. All right, when you're getting the benefits, if it's a tile, you just gain the tile. All right, if it's a building, you're going to add it to your side of your board. It's going to give you a benefit throughout the game. All right, if it's a 1x, these are tiles you can use once and then discard them to the general supply. All right, and so on and so on. Sometimes they're just getting stuff from the general supply, so you can get money, remove water, get wood, do some conversion, and so on and so on. All right, not be affected by the rain from the phase board, and so on and so on. This one is actually giving the ability of your helper to do the development action as well. All right, and that's the benefits you're going to be gaining. Now, you'd want to be first for a couple of reasons. You're always adding to the top right and you're stacking them up for multiple players. All right, and you're going to see here on the helper boards, all right, the points you're going to gain. So for the yellow section, only the first player is going to get points. So the first person to develop. All right, but as you move up, more and more players are going to get points for developing. All right, and then you're going to notice also some resources in the top right. That's actually because, right, you can actually develop something that somebody else has already developed, even though you don't have a token there. I'm just going to show you with an example. So let's say Green did 4 developments and he made his way all the way to the top over there, and you really wanted to develop this yourself, right? And you currently only have this development. What you can do is you could actually develop this spot. You still need the prerequisite. So let's say I had 4 discs and 4 browns for whatever reason. All right, you can develop, all right, but you have to pay the person that you're covering up the resource indicated on the right over here. So for all the browns, you need to pay that person a food. For all the greens, it's a coal. And for the silvers here, it's either a wood, a coal, or a food. All right, so if I really wanted to cover up this one and I had no connections there, I can pay green a lumber, for example. But you only pay the person you're covering up. So let's say white was already there and then green was on top of white and then red was on top of green. Well, I would only have to pay green. I wouldn't have to pay white, even though white was there first. White would get more points, obviously, but I only have to pay the person on top. Alright, so those are all the actions in the game. Let's circle back to the phase board over here and talk about the other things that you can encounter. So I forgot to mention actually these rain clouds. So at the start of the game, the first thing you're going to encounter is a rain cloud. And this just means adding a water droplet to your board. Alright, so that's going to happen twice per year, so 6 times in the whole game. Alright, and the only other things to talk about are the winter steps over here. Alright, so you're going to do these in order. Alright, so the first thing you're going to do is exchange your coal that you've excavated throughout that year into victory points. So 1 and 2 equals 0 points, 3 equals 2 points, 4 equals 3 points, and so on and so on. So after you get to 3, it's the amount of coal minus 1 in victory points. So if I look at my board here, I have 5, so I'm going to exchange these 5 into 4 victory points. I'm just going to go up the victory point track. Alright, everyone's going to do that. After that, you're going to deal with the tax. Alright, so you're going to look at the current year. So you're going to look at the year marker, and that's the tax you have to pay. So in year 1, you have to pay 2 food. In year 2, it's 2 food and $1. And in year 3, it's 1 food and $2. So you're going to go into the general, your personal supply and pay the general supply the current tax. Alright, so I had the 2 food, so I would just pay. Now for every item you cannot pay, you're going to get a debt token. So if you can't pay 1, you get 1. If you can't pay 2, you get 2. And if you can't pay all 3, you're going to get 3 debt tokens. These are going to get exchanged into negative points at the end of the game. I'm going to talk about that during end game scoring. All right, but in this case, I had enough, so I paid. All right, after that, everyone's done that step. You're going to go into the storing phase. Alright, so you're going to have different buildings that you're able to store things, but at the start of the game, you're only going to have this, and this sort of house icon means you can store something for the following year. Alright, so in this example here, let's say I have a food and a wood left over. Alright, my farmhouse can only store one item. Alright, so I'm going to end up losing one of these items before I start the next year. And I get to pick which one I want to store. Alright, if I store a lumber, I'm going to score a point. But food is more valuable, so maybe I'll store a food. So let's say I store a food, alright, and then I'll lose this into the general supply. And that's how you do the store. Alright, for example here, if I would have had this connector to my farm, that's where I would be able to store my lumber, but maybe I would obviously store my food over here and store my lumber here, because this would score me points for my lumber, and this would score me points for my food, so I would score extra points. And that's how the store step works. Alright, you have to lose everything else. Alright, including coal, because remember, coal, you can actually keep coal. Alright, and then you move on to the next year. Alright, the next year, pretty simple. You're just going to move down the year icon, and then you're just going to keep going. Obviously, if you're in year 3 and you finish the store and you move over, well, that's the end of the game. You're going to go to end game scoring. Alright, and finally we get to end game scoring. Now, before we do, I did forget to mention one thing during the development section. When you're placing your discs, you score these points right away. Alright, so if you're the first person on this spot, you'll score a point. Alright, everyone else is going to score nothing. And if you're first person on the silver, you'll score 2 points, and so on and so on. Alright, now for end game scoring, very simple. Follow the rulebook, alright, because it's pretty complex. Alright, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to go through your tunnel, and you're going to check wherever you've excavated. You're going to score all those points in the tunnel section. Alright, after that, you're going to score the icons. Alright, and these you only score if you have the development that has these icons. So for example, if I have this development here, alright, for each of these mine symbols, I'll score an extra point. So you're going to go throughout your board and all the other developments looking for that icon that you've developed, and you'll score extra points for that. After that, you're going to look at your buildings. Alright, so there's 4 in the game, and depending on how many you got, you'll score extra points. So if you have all 4, you'll score 10 points. After that, for each of these 1x tokens that you didn't end up using throughout the game, you'll score a point for each. After that, you exchange your money into points. So 1 is 2 points, but 4 is 14 points, quite a bit. Next, you're gonna lose points for your debt and your water. Alright, now let's tackle debt first. Your first debt is only minus 1 point. But every debt you have after the first one is minus 2 points. So if you have 2 debt tokens, you have minus 3. 3 debt tokens is minus 5. And 4 debt tokens is minus 7, for example. Alright. And finally, you lose points according to your water. So your first water, you'll just remove it. After that, you'll lose a point for every water after that. So if you have 5 water at the end of the game, you'll lose 4 points. If you have 3 water, you'll lose 2 points. For example, if you only have 1 water, you lose nothing. Alright, you take care of that on the point track. Whoever has the most points after that is going to be the winner of the game. Alright, so those are all the rules to Haspelknecht. Click the link below for my playthrough and my review. Alright, so we'll see you in the next one. Later.